Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Indira. I'm the Vice President of Programs for Athena this year, and my main job is as the Executive Director of the Helen Gordon Davis Center for Women. And I have to tell you, this is a very special day, not just because we have a great website for URA, not just because we have a great program today, and as a former journalist, I'm particularly thrilled with that, but also because today is officially the 42nd birthday of the Helen Gordon Davis Center for Women. And I know many of you in this room work with Helen and supported this effort, and we want to thank you all for your continuing support. So it's a big cake day for me, and I'm very excited. And now to the business at the end. Good afternoon. In keeping with the theme of this year, the focus of today's Culture Connection is exploring the impact of climate change on our connected coastlines. We are honored to host a preeminent panel of thought leaders for this conversation, led by Indira Lakshmanan. I hope I said that right, Indira. Executive editor of the award-winning Poetry Center in Washington, D.C., and former Newmark Chair in Journalism Ethics at the Poynter Institute in St. Petersburg. Our panelists include Klatches, a veteran journalist who assumed the role of Tampa Bay Times executive editor in August of last year. Mindy, who is president, publisher, and executive editor of the Miami Herald, and Varian, business editor and point person for Florida climate reporting for the Tampa Bay Times. Come on. More than a dozen newsrooms across the Sunshine State have come together to show readers how climate change is affecting their lives and their livelihoods, and what can be done. With funding for reporting and support for educational outreach from the nonprofit Pulitzer Center, the newsrooms are undertaking two major projects to document the effects of rising temperatures, sea levels, rainfall, coastal flooding, and more. We hope you enjoy this unique opportunity to hear directly about this vital public service journalism from top news executives who are leading the reporting. We will make time available for your questions, and I'm sure you'll have them. There are microphones set up on the side of the room. So please join me in welcoming Indira, Mark, Mindy, and Bill.
First of all, I want to thank the Athena Society, and specifically Lorna, for being so kind to reach out to me several months ago and invite me to come here and speak to this amazing group of women leaders from Tampa Bay. I'm so honored to be invited to come here. And what I said to Lorna and Anne when they invited me was that they basically made an open, like, come talk about whatever you want. And I said, wait a second, I have an idea. Something is percolating. It isn't public yet, but this is going to make for a great conversation. And what it was the Pulitzer Center was busy putting together something that we call our Connected Coastlines Reporting Initiative, which is a nationwide effort to support newsrooms in coastal states to be able to write in science-based, evidence-based journalism about climate change and how it's affecting all of us. I talked to Marqués and Mindy Marqués when I met them at a local news summit in Denver in March. I knew that the two of them were cooking up something to get all Florida newsrooms to collaborate and share their reporting on climate change, which is something very unusual in our business, to share reporting in a business all about scoops and exclusives. And I knew that we at the Klatches Center were really excited about supporting them in their work to take deep science-based efforts at looking at climate change. So I said, give me a minute to get this all together. And once it was together, they were so kind to agree, along with Varian, who was running the effort for the Tampa Bay Times, to join me and talk to you about this. You are a group of Florida influencers, and I really hope that putting these news executives in front of you will be a chance for you to hear what they're doing, hear their message, and spread it out among other communities. I know we have an environmental lawyer in our midst. I know we have the mom of a U.S. congresswoman who I've interviewed on NPR about her work specifically on climate change. I'm sorry that Representative Castor herself wasn't able to come today, but I know there are a lot of influencers in this room who want to know about what these news organizations are doing and how we can be part of it. So I want to start out by just asking a very basic question, which is, not everyone in this country even agrees about climate change, whether it's real, what it actually means. And so in a way, you're taking this very head on by saying this is a climate change reporting initiative. And Mindy, let me just start with you, because you had raised this with me. How do you even name it climate change at the risk of alienating some of your readers? How do you bring people on board with where we are and what is real?
I think that anyone who lives in Florida knows this is not a theoretical issue, right? We're living it. And so while there can be debate nationally about what it is or what might be the cause, I think we all know in our different, across the state that we're living with, something is happening in our lifetime that we have not seen before, right? Everything from red tide, algae blooms, catastrophically strong hurricanes are forming year after year after year. Natural areas that already disappeared, transformed, like the Southern Everglades, for instance, which has already gone from a freshwater marsh to a salty water mangrove. So we're living with the day-to-day impact. We're seeing it. Our readers are seeing it. And so we're like, I just think we have to get beyond that and come up with really combine our resources around smart, nuanced, local, solutions-focused journalism that would help our readers live their daily lives.
Well, tell us, because you took a strong step to try to put together this coalition. As I mentioned, we all know about the newsboy waving a paper saying exclusive, exclusive, scoop. That's what newsrooms have always risen and fallen on, their own exclusive material. So why even think about sharing this, about sharing information across the state?
Well, the news industry is in a period of tremendous disruption, and that did not start yesterday. It's actually been well over a decade. And I think what you're seeing around the country, and certainly with this type of initiative, is a new pragmatism about how we can cover things and do things and work together to help serve our readers. So ultimately, the readers win. In a case like this, to be honest, there are voracious news consumers in this room, okay, who read a lot of things. I had a reader from the Tampa Bay Times come up to me and cite at least 5 or 6 different subscriptions that she has to news organizations, newspapers, and news websites. That's very rare. Most people will get have a primary source for local news, a primary source for national news. Sometimes it's the same, but often it's different. So there's not a lot of overlap in the readers of the Tampa Bay Times and the Miami Herald, or even the Bradenton newspaper, or certainly Lakeland and Orlando. So why not join forces to bring people together? So what happened with this initiative, which was fascinating, the South Florida newspapers actually started a collaboration covering sea rise last year and won national awards for this work. Miami was very deeply involved in that. And when we got together, it's a really interesting little backstory. We were all together, the 3 of us were in Denver in March, and I had just judged a contest at Pointer in which the South Florida papers won an award for their great editorial writing about rising seas in South Florida. And I thought to myself, wow, this has got to be bigger than that. It's got to be a statewide initiative. There's so much opportunity here to go beyond just writing about editorials and opinion, but to cover news, do watchdog reporting, enterprise reporting, project reporting, and trying to find out a way to do it together. So the first person I sought out when I saw Mindy in Denver, Colorado at a conference that Facebook had actually been putting together was to say, we got to take this statewide, and her eyes lit up. And within a matter of weeks, we had 12 partners. Now we have 18 across the state of Florida, some not even in Florida. Inside Climate News is a member. The University of Florida is a member. Reveal from the Center for Investigative Reporting is a member. So we have lots of different collaborators and many news organizations. WUSF is a member. The latest one to join us, working to try to tackle this together, because this new pragmatism is taking hold amongst us. We were 4 times bigger 10 years ago than we are today. So we don't have the resources to be able to cover news the way we once could. So joining forces with other news organizations is the way to get that done.
I want to direct your attention to the screen there, because Bill has put together a slideshow to show what the Florida Climate Reporting Network is doing. Bill, do you want to just take us through it a little bit?
Sure. Is there a way to go backward?
The red button.
All right, so,
You can use your mic.
yes, sorry about that. Starting in July, we started sharing stories with one another, each of the newsrooms that are participating. And as Mark mentioned, it started with just 6 newsrooms, has grown to 18. And we use Slack to share our stories with one another. And since July, we've shared 60 different stories. Most of them have ended up on the front pages of newspapers that used to be just fierce rivals. So it's really cool.
And Bill, did this start out with each of you agreeing that you would create a content bank, and that every member of this content sharing agreement would have to basically deposit 2 stories into the bank per month? Is that how it works?
Yes, basically, everybody that has agreed to participate agrees to contribute at least 2 stories a month. It's not fine or anything. But so far, there really hasn't been, I haven't seen any problem with any of the newsrooms contributing more than their stories.
Well, just real quickly, the beauty of that is if there's 18 partners putting in 2 stories a month, we get to then draw out 36 stories, right? I think I'm doing the math right. I went into journalism to avoid doing math, but I think that's right. And we've largely been publishing almost every story that the partnership produces. So you've seen us feature stories on the front page, Florida, focus on Florida, climate change, under that banner, and we are now featuring all those stories on our website.
So this, Bill, I think is a really good illustration of what Mark is talking about. Just walk us through what you put together here in this montage.
So I asked some of the other participating newsrooms to send us some of the front pages where they featured climate stories, and it's run the gamut from more investigative stories to a featured story you see at the bottom middle. It's on our paper. It's from the Herald on roseate spoonbills and how they're where their roosting is changing. They're migrating farther north, and it's a feature story because it's a beautiful bird, but it's also kind of alarming. They used to be very much rooted in South Florida, and they're gradually changing their range to be based more in Central Florida, Georgia, and that's one of the ways we're showing people that climate change is already happening. There's not. It's one of the things we've been focusing on, is showing people the way climate change is already all around.
And this a notion of showing people how the news affects their lives. I mean, I think that's the key element and mission of local journalism. And I want to widen the lens just a little bit for a minute. There is, and people in this room who aren't in the news industry might not be aware that there really is an existential crisis facing local news in America. News in general, but especially local news. And since the advent of the internet, essentially that has killed off the print advertising model that kept newspapers profitable for decades and decades. And it has also meant that people expect their news to be free. They expect to go to a digital website and they get angry if they get a paywall because they think news is free. Now, we all up here know that news gathering is extremely expensive. You have to employ a professional staff, not people who are making it up, but people who actually know how to do reporting, right? Although the reason all those fake news sites are so successful is because they don't actually have any costs. They don't have reporters. They just have people who make things up. So if you're in the real news industry, you're having that's fiction writing. If you're in the real news industry, you actually have to employ people to gather and edit the news, and you have to pay them. You have to pay their costs to go do reporting. So we're in this situation where the Pew Research Center just came out recently with a study showing that in the last 10 years, newspapers lost almost 50% of their jobs. And what we're talking about is a loss of jobs in newspapers equivalent to 1,000 people a month being laid off nationwide, which are bigger job losses than in the coal industry, the fishing industry, and steel workers combined. We think about those people all the time. Well, there are more newspaper people losing their jobs than all three of those industries combined. So what I want to ask you, maybe part of this feels like it's just, I don't want to use the word desperation, but it's necessary. It's necessary for you to combine forces because local news organizations don't have the resources they once had.
Yeah, so I want to say, first of all, subscribe. You definitely should subscribe after hearing that to my grandma's, but please,
News isn't free, you have to pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth the price of a Starbucks coffee, like once a week, right? To pay for your subscription. To get really amazing journalism. So I guess I'd say two things. One is, I don't know that it's not desperation, it's that, how necessity is the mother of invention. Well, that's what this is. I think that there was a time when each of us had newsrooms of over 400 people, and so we didn't have to collaborate with anyone. We could just go mano a mano on every kind of news. And so as we have gotten smaller, and another thing I want to say is, we have gotten smaller, but I am absolutely certain that in every city, we still have the largest news organizations, bar none, compared to other media. So while we're really good at also telling our story, just know that I'm certain that Tampa Bay Times, Miami Herald, we have more journalists working in our newsrooms than other media. So that's another reason that you want to support local journalism. And lastly, I would say that the local aspect, I think, is really, really key. I think, you might subscribe to the New York Times or Washington Post, and that's great. I would, I would say drop that. But I want to say that the biggest decisions that really impact your daily quality of life are happening on a local level, right? Like how your property taxes are being spent, the quality of your child's education, the criminal justice system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we're the ones who are on the ground covering that. And so I think the power of this coalition is that we know what the national perspective has been on climate change, and up until this last election, the former Florida administration barred the use of climate change in official state communications, so you know what the level of that was. And so really, local governments are really leading the innovative fight on climate change, right? They're looking for solutions. So while everybody else is quibbling, they're actually doing things to try to tackle the problem. And so when you put all those efforts together, we start to get a picture that is not the parachute journalists coming in and with incredible headlines like Miami underwater by 2100, which by the way was a real headline. Instead you get nuanced reporting, solutions focused, not sugar-coated, but actual. And I think some of the things that I see happening in our own government, for instance, the city of Miami Beach is actually one of the leaders in the country on trying to, do something and be proactive. Of course, it makes sense, right? Like the whole economy of the place relies on the natural beauty and the beaches and whatnot. And so you've got a city that's spending $500 million on a 10-year plan and it's doing everything. And compare that to Florida's $5.5 million, by the way. I know you all go to Tallahassee, that would be something you want to rock it around. To install pumps, raise streets, and do things like experimental green infrastructures, solutions like turning a golf course into a wetland, creating bioswales that can absorb water. So a lot of the innovations are happening at that level, and I think that that's what we get when we can share those kinds of stories across this network and across the state, because that's also learning from other communities. What are they doing to get in front of this, or at least to try to tackle it?
Just to the issue of cost for journalism, we do this to serve you, right? We got into this business because we love it and it's a calling and we want to tell stories and we want to make a difference. No one's getting rich doing this. And we actually have gotten to the point where we've started to calculate some of the costs of stories that we did. We did a story last year about All Children's Hospital that we calculated. This was a story that showed that children were dying in the hospital at alarming rates. Nobody had made that connection until the Times did. It led to sweeping reform. But that cost over $300,000 just to do that series of stories. We did a story a couple of weeks ago on Scientology, which many of you may have seen. At least $100,000 to make that happen. This isn't free, what we do. And what we're trying to do, we're not trying to return huge profits to shareholders or anything like that. We're just trying to continue to produce local news for our community the best way we can.
I just want to add to that. There's the cost of the humans doing the work. I mean, when you invest a couple of reporters and let them spend 2 years on a project, that's expensive. There's a hidden cost that I don't think the public's always aware, and those are the costs of getting the documents, and that's really key to this climate change. I mean, I can tell you that for the Jeffrey Epstein investigation that we did last year, we spent $100,000 just on legal fees alone. So it is an expensive thing. It's absolutely critical. We do it because we believe it's absolutely critical to our democracy and just the way this country runs. And so, but it is, and for this kind of reporting, I think it's just as important when you consider all of the questions around the issue.
Well, that connects nicely to our mission at the Pulitzer Center on Crisis Reporting, which is based in Washington, D.C. We are a nonprofit journalism organization, and our motto is journalism and education for the public good. That's the whole point. And the reason we were founded some 13 years ago was in order to help newsrooms who were flailing and not having trouble being able to do those undercovered stories, let's say, the sort of worthy, serious, important stories, but they weren't like the gossip or the entertainment or sports, which are going to continue no matter what. And we wanted to make sure that stories on important issues like this that really affect people's lives still happen. So as part of that, I'm proud to say that the Florida Climate Reporting Network is among our grantees. We gave out grants to 15 different either entities like them, newsrooms, or freelancers around the country to cover every coastline. So we have reporting groups working up and down the East Coast, the Gulf Coast, the Great Lakes, the West Coast, Alaska, and Hawaii. And we were so thrilled to be able to support you guys on 2 major projects. And by the way, to what you said about records costs, I remember looking over your budget and seeing that a major line item for both of the projects we supported was FOIA records. And for those of you who don't know, that means Freedom of Information Act. So there's all sorts of public records that they're having to get as part of this research. What also really appealed to me about your 2 proposals was that you were going to be working with University of Florida and other scientists who've already created data sets. So you're not reinventing the wheel. I mean, this is the other thing. As you say, you got into journalism to escape math. So did I. So I'm never going to pretend that I or other journalists are actually good at math or good at quantitative things. But if you rely on the scientists who are not getting attention for all the great data sets they've already put together, this is a way that journalism and science can work together. We know how to tell the story in a way that some scientists may not. And we need their data to be able to tell that story. So the 2 projects that we're supporting the network to do, one is called First to Go, and it's about which are the 10 communities in Florida that would be the first to go as sea level rises. That's cheerful. And the other one is to build a Florida climate assessment reporting project in the same way that California does it as a state service. The state of Florida does not do this, so you guys wanted to do it and build it from the ground up. Bill, why don't you tell us a little bit about that since you're leading that reporting?
So concurrent with the climate network formation, there was a group of us in the newsroom that had been talking about how we could amp up our game a little bit on climate coverage. It was driven largely by some of the younger reporters, frankly, in the newsroom, who are terribly concerned about their future, what lies ahead, and came to some of us as editors and said, we should be doing more about this. So we started having meetings internally at times and discussing, okay, so what does that look like? What are we doing now, and what can we be doing better? And one of my personal frustrations with a lot of climate coverage is that it focuses in on some big bad thing that's going to happen in the future. It's abstract, and it's scary, and as a couple people have alluded to, what can we even do about that? So why even bother? And so we brainstormed about, is there a way we could take a little bit different approach? Are there things about climate change that are not being covered? We invited some scientists into our newsroom to join our meetings and talk to us about what they know is happening out there. And they mentioned the climate assessment in California that is done every 4 years. The state government there funds to the tune of about $15 million every 4 years a climate assessment where they look at what's happening with the climate of California in ways that are measurable based on science, 34 different categories.
It includes things like sea level rise and what else?
Sea level rise, but also energy consumption and heat. And so these scientists that we invited in said that they are trying to get state funding to do a similar thing here in Florida. And forgive me if I was a little skeptical of their chances. And so we started talking about whether or not there would be a valid public service for us to try to do something similar. Maybe not on the scale, we don't have $15 million to spend, but what is the science that's available out there that maybe we could assemble in a way and translate it for people and show them. And we're here in Florida, which we routinely read is one of the most vulnerable states in the country to climate change. Is there a way we could look at climate and the science around climate and specifically apply it to Florida? And we've done some preliminary work, and it seems to indicate that, yeah, we can do that. And really show climate through a landscape that our readers will understand, because that's one of the other things that's kind of hard to fathom when you read climate coverage. Or, it's this bad thing that's going to sink islands in the Pacific, or just affect places that we're maybe not familiar with. We're going to be affected here. And in fact, we went in thinking about how there's so much skepticism around the topic. We gave a lot of thought to, could we show that climate change is already here in Florida? And really make this concrete with people using science, accepted science to document climate change, and then go out and report on people who are being affected, people that you might recognize because they're your neighbor. And so we've tried to identify 6 measurements that we could look at and assemble data on. And right now we've got 3, probably 4, and we're still rooting around for 2 others. We've got a bunch of ideas about what they might be. But
Bill, do you have a slide to show us that shows some of this already coming together?
it's still very much, this is